let us go back to the Zoom machine and say hello to the one and only Jeremy Piven. There he is. Jeremy, how are you?
How are you, sir? I'm good, man. How are you? Congratulations.
Oh my gosh. This is surreal for me. I can't believe you're actually on the show in the flesh.
And listen, it's an honor to be here. I've been watching for a really long time. Ever since you cut that dead weight Daniel Cormier off, I'm just kidding. We love DC.
We do love DC.
I joke, I kid.
Yes. Well, thank you for doing this. You're a podcaster yourself, as I was mentioning as we were setting you up. How you live in J Piven is the name, correct?
That is correct.
You can get it anywhere. How are you liking this? Because you're having some fighters on. You had Tyron Woodley on last week. You had Jorge Masvidal on. You're kind of encroaching on my territory here, Jeremy, if I'm being honest.
Well, listen, I'm inspired by what you've been doing. As you know, I've been a fight fan forever, and I trained a bit so that I know how difficult it is, and so that I have a perspective on what these guys have been through. And I'm a huge fan. I sat down with Oscar De La Hoya just now. I'm going to release that next. He was incredibly candid with me to the point where he's such a hero of mine, and he's just a beautiful, interesting, eccentric, brilliant fighter.
And of course, he's fighting on September 11th against actually our next guest, Vitor Belfort. So that's going to be really interesting. Let's start at the beginning. How did you get into the fight game? Who got you into it? How did you become a fan? How long ago was this? How old were you?
Wow. Rashad Evans back in the day, being from Chicago, there are certain guys that I just gravitated towards. And so I would kind of train with him a little bit. And then after realizing that there aren't any medium-sized Jews in the MMA, that I had to go for an early retirement. Guys like that, even Tyron, as you know, are really talented in and outside the octagon and fascinating dudes. And, I have a little background in Muay Thai, and I remember I was working with a guy named Benny Arquidez, and I was sparring and I broke my toe, and he told me to go back in. And I told him that I was an actor, and I taped up my toe and then left the dojo because I lived to fight another day. And so I'm just a huge fan of the whole game.
What do you like more these days, MMA or boxing?
It's fascinating because, as you know, with MMA, they fight everyone. And it's just kind of fascinating in that way. And the best fight the best. And in boxing, sometimes it's a little frustrating because they can kind of dodge each other. And so it gets a little frustrating. Last night was fascinating. A lot of people would be lying if they said they weren't rooting for Tyron. And mostly because he's dedicated his entire life, to mixed martial arts and made a lot of sacrifices. And I think people wanted him to show up, and he did. And I think Jake felt his power. I think we all wanted him to close the show. And was confused why he didn't, or cut off the ring, or kind of go for his at that moment. And so it was a little frustrating for everyone, but you got to give it up for Jake for weathering that storm. And it was a fun night.
Okay, so I was actually just going to ask you about that fight. Clearly you watched it. Has your opinion on Jake Paul changed as a result of last night? Did you feel a certain way about him going into the fight, and then after seeing what he was able to withstand, what he was able to weather from Tyron Woodley, now made you change your opinion on him?
Listen, everyone writes those guys off. There is a certain amount of discipline that you have to even be on the level they were at or are at as YouTubers.
Mm-hmm.
They got to grind every day. They're strong Midwest kids. They got the best trainers money can buy, and they're focused. It'll just be a very interesting test to see once they take on some guys with a background in just boxing, how that plays out for them. But, even Dana said, listen, guys are asking for that type of money, but you need to get those types of eyeballs. So it's just really a business, and they bring in those types of eyeballs. So it's going to be an interesting journey. We all tuned into the circus, and I was one of them,
I was front and center, for God's sakes. I was right in the middle of it.
Yeah,
and I loved everything about it.
Bro, you were in the belly of the beast. You were inciting rematches. It was madness.
And I would say it was magic as well, because I loved it. I've literally dreamed of being in that moment and wondered how I would react in that moment. I don't know if I did well or not, but just actually experiencing it for the first, because I grew up watching Larry Merchant in that moment, Jim Gray in that moment, Max Kellerman in that moment. And so just for me, it was honestly like an out of body experience. I'm sure you've experienced that in your career as well. It was just surreal stuff.
Yeah, but you were ready for the moment. Like Shakespeare says, I'm going to quote Shakespeare on your show.
Thank you.
Could be a first.
Yes.
The readiness is all. And you were ready. You were ready. It was great. You had a great time. You were ready for your moment. It was fun to watch.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you want to see a rematch? Do you care to see a rematch? Do you feel like there's any interest in that, or do you want to
listen? It's all just fun theater, and it just would be interesting to see because Tyron is so incredibly talented, and I think we all wanted him to pull the trigger more. And as I said to him on my podcast, watch this transition.
Okay.
How you living, Jay Piven? I asked Tyron. I basically said to him, I don't think this kid has felt your power without headgear. And so it was really interesting when he got hit into those ropes. Tyron has incredible power, and so I think we all wanted him to sell out and go for it and close the show, cut off the ring, all those things. And so it might be interesting to see if he can achieve that next time. Absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously, Jake has the pick of the litter. He can go in a bunch of different directions. So that remains to be seen. Yeah. I'm curious, as someone who loves to interview people, like this whole show is just guest after guest after guest. It's always interesting to me when I see a famous person who's usually on the other side of the interview, the interviewee, if you will, then transition to become interviewer, because I often feel like people think like, oh, I could just do it. It's no big deal. I've been asked a bunch of questions. I've been in interview settings for my whole life. But as you know, famous people can be quite egotistical and not really listen and just want to talk about themselves and whatnot. And so for someone like yourself who has been in the spotlight, but mostly on the other side of the table, right? Usually in this setting where you're being asked questions, to now be the guy who's asking the questions, do you feel like that's been a hard transition for you?
No, because as you know, I get to interview my heroes and people that I'm genuinely curious about. And so I'm from Chicago. I was lucky enough to grow up watching Michael Jordan and Walter Payton and all the greats. And I started kind of interviewing even back in the day. And I've been improvising, was on stage at Second City my whole life and doing this. So like, I think if you're, as you know, genuinely fascinated by people, and stay in the pocket with them, and don't make it about you, you're going to be okay. So I've been having an absolute blast.
And why start now? Why, there's an abundance of podcasts, right? There's so many. Why start this now?
I've been doing stand-up comedy. And so what I started doing was a documentary about stand-up. And so sitting down with Jamie Foxx and Tiffany Haddish and all these great comics and just asking them about their world and the difference between good and great and transitions and how they've done it. So I kind of came by all this honestly. Then I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing all these interviews. I'm just going to keep going because I love it. And it kind of unfolded organically into this podcast. And I just can't wait to do it. It's been really, really fun. And next up also is Rex Lee, who played Lloyd on Entourage.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was kind of fascinating because I had, he was just such a pro. And what's funny is I think he was Ari and I was Lloyd, because I would go to him in the mornings and say, like, is it okay if I say this? I'm about to say, some crazy, crazy ass shit. I'm sorry. Can I swear right
Absolutely.
now?
Go nuts. Yeah.
I can.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I said, Rex, I almost called him Lloyd. See what happens?
Yeah.
I said, I'm about to say, have you had so much cum squirted in your eyes that you can't see what's right in front of your fucking face? I'm going to say this. Are you all right with it? And he goes, of course I am. Just let's go. Someone yell action. Let's go. And so, in the mornings, I was always very, I would defer to him, and he was kind of like, ready to go and crush it. And, I'm a stage actor from Chicago. And I think when you create an authentic character and you're in people's living rooms for a decade, people get confused and they think that you are that character. So that's one of the many reasons to do a podcast, so that people can get a sense of who I am.
And a perfect transition and a great answer there. That's one of the all-time great characters in the history of television, iconic, to put it mildly. Are you tired of the character? You are so, I mean, typecast is a word. Like Jason Alexander has had to deal with this. So many greats have had to deal with this.
Yeah.
You are Ari Gold to many people from Entourage fame.
Right.
Are you tired of being associated with this guy?
I think if I was tired of it, I think if I was resentful, it would be a lot of wasted energy, because it's a gift to work, as you know, and to play something authentically and then be confused for that character is part of the territory. So it's my job to find other roles that will make a connection with the audience that will last. I just finished a movie with Terrence Howard and Tyrese, where I've never played a character like this in my life, and it was just incredible. I have a movie that's called American Night that premieres at the Venice Film Festival in a week, and so I'm very lucky that I get to just continue to work and find these different characters, and something else is going to hit, and then I'll be typecast as the Southern Warden that I just played, which was a very shocking and offensive character. And he's a guy that it's based on a true story, that cultivates this fight club within his prison.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's for your listeners, I think that they're going to really love it. And, life is too short to be resentful and to be honest with you, that's a great question. And yes, I did used to be offended when they would scream, Ari Gold, let's hug it out, bitch, or I'm a douchebag because of you. And they would smack me on the back as I'm at the urinal. I would get a little confused, but it's all part of the territory.
How long did it take you to get over that?
A lifetime. No, it's one of those things, and I don't mean to go into this kumbaya
no, I love
head
it.
talk territory with you right now, but I think it's about, for me, like when I was talking to, the Cuban Jesus, Jorge or George Masvidal, and I said, you made a transition from good to great. And I knew about this transition. I was fascinated by it. And he was stuck in Puerto Rico and in the jungle. And they took his phone away from him. And he was alone and got to have that perspective on what he wants, and how to go about it. And he wasn't distracted by the circus and your thoughts and doubts and fears. And I think once you kind of stop all that and go inward and meditate and kind of own the truth, it's a much better way to navigate. Man, this is getting pretentious.
No, I love this. This is stuff that I love doing and talking about, and I don't often get the opportunity to speak to people like you with the career that you had. Now, here's where we get back to MMA, because the character that you were portraying, Ari Gold, was based off of Ari Emanuel, who's the head of Endeavor, WME, all that stuff, who now is the owner of the UFC. And so for those that don't know, everyone associates Dana White with it, but it's Endeavor, it's Ari Emanuel, Patrick Whitesell. I'm curious about this. Yeah. What kind of relationship did you have with Ari Emanuel as you were playing the character, if any?
Great question. Ari Emanuel is a brilliant businessman, obviously. And, was the inspiration and the prototype and the muse for Ari Gold. He was my agent. To this day, he represents guys like Mark Wahlberg. And so, unbeknownst to me, I was almost like a dramaturg, like studying this guy. He was my agent. So I got to witness, all of his eccentricities. And so that character is very much based on him. And he's brilliant at what he does. He's a machine. And he has a lot of fascinating dualities that I was able to throw into that character. And I had a blast, man. I mean, talk about to equate it to a fighter. It's like, for me as an actor, I've been acting my whole life. I mean, by the time, when I was playing that role at 37 years old, they voted me the fresh face of the year. And I said, there's nothing fresh about my face, but thank you. And that was after a lifetime. I've been on stage for 30 years and I finally broke through. I broke through at a time when professional fighters are retiring. So all I did was there's nothing different about what I do. I just didn't give up.
Obviously, the character that you were playing, very fiery and controversial with the things that you say. You were tough on the people that worked for you and whatnot. Who was more eccentric behind the scenes, like Ari Gold or Ari Emanuel? Was Ari Gold like Ari Emanuel times 100, or were you actually turning it down? How close to the personality were you?
I mean, I shouldn't be saying this, but I was so close that I remember at one time someone just said, "Hey guys, this isn't a documentary." Literally, no, I swear to you, they were like, "We have to take that out." And by the way, I think one of the reasons why people responded to the show, listen, it was a backstage live about Hollywood. If we were getting it wrong, we all would have known. But we did everything we could to get it right and make it authentic. And he's one of these guys who gets it done. He gets it done at all costs. And it was just an honor to play that character. And again, let my hands go.
I would like to tell you a story that I think you would appreciate about him. I don't think I've ever shared it on this show or on any show. I've only met Ari Emanuel once. It was at UFC 208 in Brooklyn, New York. So very shortly after, they pretty much took over at UFC 202 Endeavor did. So just a few months after they took over, February of 2017. And I'm not sure how much you know about my history, but myself and the UFC brass haven't always seen eye to eye, to put it mildly. Not big fans of mine. Just for my reporting, you know how it is. Media, people don't like media. Regardless, I'm in the media room, and Ari Emanuel and company walk into the media room. Now, my name is Ari as well, right? I'm Ariel. He's Ari. And so he walks in. It's an imposing figure, even though he's not a very big guy, but, everyone knows he has a presence. And he comes up to me and someone says, I hear someone saying that's Ariel Helwani. And he goes to me and said, "This sport is only big enough for one, Ariel." And I was like wondering it. And then he says, "Let's hug it out, bitch." He said that to me. He said, "Let's hug it out, bitch." And we hugged.
Wow.
Could you imagine?
That's a meta moment, my friend. That's heavy. That's cool. I think that there was a part of him that embraced, listen, he's one of these guys who was at the top of his game, but not everyone knows, because those guys work behind the scenes. And here you have a fictional character portraying him. It's rare. And that was a line, the show was so brilliantly written by Doug Ellen, right? And one of the great interesting fallacies or misconceptions about the show is that I'm just out there improvising, and the reality is it's scripted and I have to hit every word. And so it's my job to make it feel and seem improvisational. And that's what actors do. But that particular line, I did improvise. "Let's hug it out, bitch."
Wow.
So for him to be quoting a line that I improvised is really crazy and fun. That he embraced it all. He's having a blast. They're killing it, And I listen. We don't know about all the drama with your journey with them, but we know that still you have these great relationships with fighters, and you're incredibly prolific, and you're doing your thing, and it's inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Silly me, I thought the "let's hug it out" was like a sign of, things to come, maybe an olive branch. Alas, that's the only time I've ever spoken to him.
He embraced you.
Yeah.
And that's, he's the big man.
That's right. At any point, did he ever say to you, "You know what, you're taking a little too far. Like, this is a little too intense. I would never go that far"?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. But, I was just incredibly lucky to have this authentic character to inform me, because he is like no other, and it's interesting, because I'm lucky enough to do movies. And then when I'm not doing movies, I'm touring, doing stand-up comedy, JeremyPiven.com. Go to my thing. Sorry, I'm celebrating myself, Aria. But I'm touring everywhere. And so I get to see in real time that people miss Entourage. They miss that show. They miss the connection. And also the power, as you know, of my podcast. Like, I just, you do have this little conversation and it goes all over the world and it's kind of crazy. But I do think that people, they miss Entourage. We're living in a time where everyone is overcorrecting. We're in this PC culture. And to see people just listen, Ari Gold was an equal opportunity offender, and he just let it go. And he also inspired people through tough love to work hard. And he beat up his assistant because he wanted him to thrive. You thought he was a pig and cheated on his wife, but he was monogamous. So there's a lot of dualities in that character that I think, were kind of fascinating and people miss. I think people miss it.
Last thing on Entourage, you opened the door for me there, so I'd be remiss if I don't ask, true or false, at some point in the future, we will see some new variation of Entourage. There will be a new piece of Entourage content that will come to us via HBO Max.
Brother, we're breaking up. Lloyd! Sorry. See what I did?
Yes, it was fantastic.
You know what? Yes, brother, I had to do it. You know what, man? You know what's so funny is I'm always the last. I'm the last to know, and I don't know. And I'm not just saying that, but that's the way it's always been. I'm doing my thing, grinding. Lucky enough to be going from one job to the next. And Doug Ellen, who created it, would have to be Mark Wahlberg would have to sign off on it. Doug Ellen wants to do it. The cast is down. Obviously HBO, and so a few things need to happen for that to go down. But I think people are really missing it. I think it's comfort food for a bunch of people.
Yes, I'm now reminded of that Jim Carrey scene in Dumb and Dumber where he says, "So you're saying there's a chance, right? Because you did not close the door, and you gave me a bit of a runaround there, but I appreciate it, and I will leave it at that." Now, you did mention JeremyPiven.com. You're touring. You're doing the comedy shows. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy. Are you doing this more than the comedy tours than recently? I feel like you've kind of gone back to your roots as of late. Am I wrong in that regard? Because I feel like you're doing I'm seeing a lot of you on tour in different random places. Is that something that you've done recently that you haven't done in a while?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Chicago doing Second City and doing sketch comedy where you're on stage with a bunch of people improvising. Stand-up is much different. I've been going really hard, doing about 250 shows a year with stand-up all in. But recently, it's interesting to juggle both worlds and to go from being on a film set to doing stand-up. But I love stand-up. And, when people see my shows, they come up to me afterwards and they say, "I had no idea you were this funny," which is interesting because I guess I must have been viciously mediocre on television for the past 30 years. Regardless, it's a huge compliment and I love it. The trick is to just keep getting better. My next project up, my sister's going to direct. I'm giving you the exclusive. It's taken from an Arthur Miller piece, a guy who, Pulitzer Prize winning author. And we're gearing up for that now. And this is a project I've been putting together forever. And, it's finally coming together. And I have to train very hard for it. As I mentioned, I got this prison movie, which is centered around a lot of fights. And that one's called The System. And I got to even do my own stunts on that. So it was a dream come true. I'm just really lucky to be working.
What was the last year and a half like for you? Like last night when I was at that fight, that was the first fight that I went to since March of 2020. And I would go to them every few weeks. And so it was a little bit emotional for me. For you, as someone who's doing stand-up and you're doing films and stuff, were you out of work for, a considerable amount of time during the pandemic? And if so, what was that like for you mentally?
I think it's an opportunity, like Tyron Woodley, I'm a mama's boy. So, I got to even get more momentum with my mother and connect with her all the time. And with people who are older, we need to keep them vital. She's been my acting teacher since I was 8 years old. So I would just grab some Shakespeare or whatever, and I would run lines with her no matter what. Keep it active. Make sure that, I'm lucky enough to have a little gym. train, work out, meditate, try to stay on my game. You do everything you can. But yes, there was obviously no live shows and very few film and TV things happening. So there's, for me, not a lot of work at all in that way. And just try to find things that you don't do. I think one of the problems that people have is that they don't want to try something new because they're afraid of looking foolish. And I've made a living out of looking foolish, so you have to dare to kind of just throw it out there and just do it.
As we wrap this up, and again, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate this, Jeremy. It's an honor to talk to you. Favorite fighters right now to watch, MMA fighters. Like if like, all right, this dude's fighting or this gal is fighting this weekend, like I'm not doing anything on Saturday. I'm going on. I can't wait to see them fight again. Are there people that come to mind right now that are really high on your list?
Wow, that's a great question. There are guys like Teofimo Lopez. There are guys out there that are brilliant fighters that a lot of people don't know about, and so I think that sport needs a little more love. And I think, Oscar is coming back and fighting. And I had this incredible conversation with him, and I couldn't believe I was telling him things, and he was revealing things that no one knows. And for instance, he's been boxing since he was 5, retired at 37, lost to Manny Pacquiao and got out of the game. And he didn't want to get out of the game. And he's been trying to get back for 10 years. One of the things that we talked about, because I know Freddie Roach, who was, obviously training Manny, Oscar had track marks on as they were facing each other and Freddie looks down and goes, uh-oh, he just got an IV. He was dehydrated. This is a tough weight cut for him. Manny, jump on him. And talking to Oscar, his legs were shot. He's a guy 5'10" and a half, cutting to 147 at 37 years old, loses to an 8-time, 8 division champion, and then gets out of the game. He's been trying to get back in for 10 years. That's going to be a crazy fight. He's going to fight Vitor Belfort, who was a boxer. And so that's going to be fascinating. I love watching Izzy. Obviously, Israel is just like, he's kind of magic. Jorge Masvidal, his journey has been incredible. So listen, I'm like you, just a fan, and there's a lot going on.
How You Livin' J Piven is the name of the podcast. JeremyPiven.com is the website. He might be coming to a town near you. I think the first time I ever saw you on television as a young boy, I hope I'm not making you feel old. I think it was on the Ellen Show, the sitcom, right? You were on that?
I think that was me.
Yes.
It's hard to tell, but yes, indeed. And by the way, I even played George Costanza at one point for the hour finale of Seinfeld.
Yes, you did.
Which is even more insane.
Oh my gosh.
By the way, at the time, because I'm such a dummy, I have that Chicago stage actor mentality. When I did Seinfeld, I was living in the pool house. I was a regular on the Larry Sanders Show, still thinking I'm a out-of-work actor. And so I didn't even have a TV. I had never seen Seinfeld when I was on Seinfeld.
Come on.
That's how dumb. I swear to you.
How's that possible? You never saw an episode?
I did. I didn't have a TV.
You didn't go to a friend's house? It was like the biggest show. I mean, it was like 80 million people watched the finale.
The finale I watched.
Yes.
The finale I definitely watched. But I'm just a weirdo, man. I just I have a strange reference for pop culture. Like I've seen every episode of Breaking Bad, but I've never seen an episode of Friends. So, I'm whatever.
Okay. I have not seen an episode of Friends as well. I did see the reunion, which was strange to just watch the reunion and not the actual sitcom when it was a thing, but that was because my wife. Alas, that's a whole other story for a different day. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you. Continued success to you. I know it's been a tough, few years for everyone, and you are doing a lot of big things right now, and I'm looking forward to that movie. Can you tell me the name of the movie, the prison guard one that you said is coming out that the fight fans might like?
I think they're really going to like The System with Tyrese and Terrence Howard.
The System.
Yes, indeed. I've also got American Night and The Walk coming out. So, I have a few movies coming out. And as you said, who knows? Entourage reboot.
Oh,
Anything's possible.
Wow. Okay. Now you're bringing it up again, which makes me even think more so that it is coming back. Thank you so much for doing this, Jeremy. Means a lot.
Thank you, buddy.
Continued
It's amazing.
success. Talk to you soon.
And congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Shalom.
All
Shalom.
right. Shalom, brother.
There he is.
Take care, man.
Jeremy Piven. How great is that? How you living, Jay Piven? That's the name of the podcast. Does a great job.